Time to decide round 4 of the Dunlop Series, third and final race. Cars on the warm-up lap, getting set for this one. And there has been some action since race 2. Chaz Mostert is on pole position, combined points from the first 2 races. But James Moffat, he has lost 50 championship points. 25 points for a bump and run pass on Cam Waters, 25 for a hit with Marcus Sukanovic. So although he's the top point scorer for the weekend, that's taken off his championship score, and he's actually lost ground to Scott McLaughlin.
He has, so he'll be disappointed with that, but I guess on the positive side for him, he gets to keep his pole position for this third and final race.
Morgan Haber starting 21st, the young Queenslander doing a good, consistent job on debut. Adam Wallace, Brett Stewart, who's been close to getting involved in action, but thankfully hasn't got into it. Michael Hector down the back with Aaron McGill. So green flag at the back, 26 cars, biggest field for the Dunlop Series in 2012. It's a great indication that the development series is really strong. Mostert and McLaughlin on the front row. The round win is on the line. Elliot Barber stalls on the grid. They've all managed to avoid him, but it's Mostert who leads. McLaughlin next, then Pye, then Walsh, and the Dreamtime Racing boys are into it again.
So Russell and Wood getting together into turn 1. Very even start for Mostert and McLaughlin. McLaughlin did the right thing. Recognised that he wasn't going to be able to go around the outside of Mostert. Tucked in behind the Ford Performance Racing machine. And they lead the way into turn 3 on this opening lap.
Remember, longer race, 22 laps. Morris is into the back of Nick Percat. And the Coates Hire Commodore has been dispatched. And I've got to say, they've got some history. You might remember Barbagallo last year.
When things aren't going for you, they're not going for you, and that's a tough way for Nick to start this race. But Jane now up the inside of Gillison, and Drew Russell trying to bump his way through as well.
Great news for the Russell team. He and brother Aaron, they've signed up Mid-North Coast Pipelines for the rest of the season. So great for one of the smaller teams to have a good backer on board.
That is great for them because, like you touched on, they are one of the smallest teams in pit lane. They do a great job with the equipment they've got. So to have a backer on board for the rest of the year is fantastic news.
Mostert out in front. Remember, he doesn't have an endurance drive for Sandown and Bathurst, so he's focused very firmly on this Dunlop Series, the development category for V8 supercars.
George Madecki out in the grass there through turn 1. Very easy to do over the bumps into turn 1. Fastest corner on the track. Blanchard there in the J-Leg Falcon fighting his way through what has been a miserable weekend for him.
And the yellow Commodore just going out of shot. That's Jeff Emery, who has done a deal to buy Craig Lowndes' current Team Vodafone car and use it in next year's championship. And how's this? Gillison in really deep around the outside, and he gets away with it too.
So Blanchard really forced the issue up the inside. Replay of the start there. So McLaughlin and Mostert, very even start. McLaughlin pulls in behind Mostert.
And that contact in the background, that was Cam Waters making a move, and I think he banged into the side of Nick Percat. Here's another replay of Morris getting into the back of Percat, and that just looked standard, really. No other way to describe it. Morris and Percat getting together. The dude bumping and boring. Of course, we didn't see whether there was anything that led him to retaliate, but this is Aussie motorsport, not American. They don't tend to like it in race control.
No, and McLaughlin now having to go defensive on Scott Pye. So it just looks like the Monster Commodore has a bit more pace over the Fujitsu Falcon at this stage in the race. And Scotty Pye has to lean on McLaughlin a little bit, but he moves into second and he'll be after Chaz Mostert.
Ash Walsh is going with them in the Sim Pro Ford. Longer race in race 3. On board with George Madecki, it's willing here. This is Andrew Jones lunging down the inside on Cam Waters, who's going for the switchback and not quite in the gap, and pulls out of the deal, which is probably what Nick Percat could have done in that contact in race 2.
And this gives Madecki a chance to have a look up the inside of Waters, but he's not quite close enough to pull off a clean move. I'll tell you what though, Noons, the Sonic Falcons this weekend have been struggling a little bit further down the field than what we've come accustomed to see from them over the years.
And on board there with George Madecki, Cytec Ford was 10th in race 2. And this is Nandy Kiss off the road. He had a couple of runs off in practice on Friday. He's managed to get away with that one at turn 1. That's one of the ex-PWR, Paul Wheel, Andrew Thompson Commodores from a few years ago. Back on board with Rodney Jane. Had major oversteer in race 1, really struggled. but said the car was much better in race 2 and they've been going in the right direction. It's just they've had to come from the middle of the field, and that's not what you do to the rear tyres.
By the sound of it, it sounds like he's got his oversteer back, sliding off turn 3 there for Jane. So the Sonic Falcons are locked together in this third and final race.
And of course, they're two different models. The FG is what Rodney's driving. That's an ex-Craig Lowndes car, and Mediki driving the older model BF, but still, they're 888 gear. They're good cars. But up front, Chaz Mostert leads the way. 17 laps to run. More action from Queensland Raceway. Just a moment. We're on the run home in the final race at Queensland Raceway. This is Ash Walsh, Simpro Ford. Hanging on from David Russell. He sits in 4th spot. And the former Formula Ford Series runner-up, spent some time racing overseas, was in this series last year but didn't really have the results that he was looking for with Miles Racing. But he's really stringing together a very good season.
He certainly has, but there's been plenty going on in this race, so let's see what's been happening.
Nick Percat, lap 1, copped a whack from Paul Morris, who copped a pit lane penalty for the Barocca Commodore driver's troubles. Now, Percat slipped back to 25th, and ever since he's been on the fight-back mission. He got by Drew Russell. This was Tim Blanchard lunging George Mediki at turn 3.
Big move up the inside for Blanchard there.
And he's another on the fight-back trail. Daniel Gillison, the young Kiwi, got into the back of Marcus Zukanovic in the Recar Commodore. So there's been plenty of action going on. They haven't used up the quota from race 2. There's still been a little bit left for race 3. Now, this is Cam Waters getting into the door of Andrew Jones. Nothing too massively big in that, but did gain a spot. And we go back to Walsh, who runs in 4th, McLaughlin 3rd, Pye is 2nd, and Mostert leads, but the top 2 have really cleared away. There they are at the exit of turn 1. McLaughlin hasn't had the pace in this race. Whatever changes they've made to that Fujitsu Ford have sent it backwards.
Well, Noons, I actually heard that they made a spring change between races, just trying to find that little bit extra speed, and clearly it's gone the other way and hurt them.
There is a big gap between he and the top 2 in this race, but he knows that Mostert's been penalised from race 2. Now, there's a black flag on the back straight. That's for Cam Waters. He's going to get a pit lane penalty for that pass that he put on Andrew Jones that we saw on replay. Now, he should have given the spot back, but then he really should have been told that by the team on the radio. I'm a little bit puzzled as to why, when that move was so forceful and contact was made, he didn't mean to crash into Andrew Jones at all, but probably could have given that one back and would have been able to go on with this race.
It's a shame for Cameron because he's had such a strong weekend. Undoubtedly his best showing in the Dunlop Series all year. So for him to, I guess, give up all those positions that he's going to with a pit lane penalty is a disappointing way for him to finish off the weekend. But this battle for 4th isn't quite over yet. David Russell looks like he's slightly quicker than Ash Walsh in these closing stages of this final race.
And it's nice to see David Russell, who's been in this series for a couple of years now. There's the black flag for his teammate Cam Waters, but Russell has struggled so far this year in the Dreamtime Commodore. Here's the replay. This is what happened. Down the inside, little lock of the right front, but he bumps Jones out of the way to get the move done. It's not a massive incident, but probably could have breathed off the throttle here and let Jones back through and raced off.
You're exactly right, Noons. The officials would have looked at that and said, well, if you had just redressed that, we probably wouldn't have done anything about it, but because he gained position, unfair advantage, they've had to give him a penalty, but here he is serving his drive-through penalty, and that is the most painful thing as a race car driver you can do, to drive through the pit lane at 40 Ks. So disappointing for Cameron, but I think this weekend has really been a turning point for him.
He's had an 8th and a 7th in the 2 races so far, so that's great for the confidence when you're such a young guy. Pye's throwing everything at Mostert here. He's chipped away at the margin.
Remaining. Keep it up, good work. Cars in front of you are now the back of the field. Keep it up.
That's Dave Patterson, race engineer for Chaz Mostert. He's worked for the last few years with Paul Dumbrell. He's worked with a range of drivers across a range of teams, and that's what we're seeing. Young drivers in the cars on the track, old school voices and experienced engineers coaching them, guiding them, keeping their brain in check, because the younger guys do tend sometimes to lose the rhythm, lose the focus.
You're right, but on the flip side, the Dunlop Series is fantastic to, I guess, breed young engineers. In 2010, I had Grant McPherson as my engineer, and look at him now. He's winning races with Will Davidson in the Championship Series, so it works both ways.
Mostert and Pye have really been the pace setters this weekend. Remember that Pye and Triple Eight, this is their test track. This is their home track. So this is the only place that Pye's been to in a V8 Supercar this year. So you'd expect him to have gone well. He didn't do the test leading into this round, but he has done some running here over the course of the year. So he's really starting to come on strong. But Chaz Mostert, he needs to get the big bag of points. He's lost 50 from race 2. And with 3 rounds to go after this weekend, there's not much time to get them back.
But one of the things that could really play into Chaz's hand is the next round of the championship at Bathurst. He's not doing the endurance races, so that means he can 100% focus on his development series duties at Bathurst, whereas his championship rivals, Scott Pye, Scott McLaughlin, Nick Percat, they're all doing double duty.
And McLaughlin here will be making his first start in the 1000 at Bathurst. He's been there in the Dunlop series for the last couple of years. He'll be with Jono Webb in the Sergeant Security Commodore for Techno Autosports, but we're on the last lap. And remember, it is a round format still in the Dunlop series, so the most points over 3 races picks up the trophy. And Chaz Mostert is on target to take his 2nd round win of the year and just eat back into the margin of McLaughlin and just carry the momentum and take a trophy away before the big gap before Bathurst.
And psychologically for Chaz to come up here, like we've said, to Scott Pye and Scott McLaughlin's test track and walk away with the silverware for the weekend, that's going to be a huge boost for him heading into Bathurst.
Final turn coming up, Chaz Mostert, 2nd year full-time in the Dunlop series. And Ford Performance Racing at Triple Eight, doesn't matter which series they're in, they're dominating, and it's Mostert who will take the win. He's a former Queenslander, he lives in Melbourne now, but this is as good as a home win will get. He takes race 3.
That's the way we roll, mate. Good work.
Dave Patterson, that's the way we roll. And that is indeed the best way to roll, with a checkered flag. McLaughlin, no pace in the last race, but smart driving. 3rd, more points, and he takes the lead to the mountain.
Impressive job by Ash Walsh to come home in 4th, David Russell 5th, Luke Yilden, Andrew Jones, Tim Blanchard and Nick Percat got all the way back to 10th.
That was a good fight back from 25th for Nick Percat. And this is the round result. Mostert takes it, Pye and McLaughlin on the podium, Ash Walsh so close in 4th, Russell 5th from Wood, Percat recovered for 7th, and Cam Waters, despite the last race penalty, P10.
Well, Chaz, it was an adventurous weekend, but you got there.
Yeah, it's good to get another win for the season, just proves that didn't get lucky at Clipsal, and yeah, it's been a bit of an up and down weekend for us, but to still come off with a win here in Queensland, my home state, and against most of these guys, test track is brilliant. So looking forward to the rest of the rounds where we might, they don't have the home track knowledge, and we'll see how we go.
Mostert could have been within 38, but 2 careless driving charges from race 2 means he'll be 88 down on McLaughlin going to the mountain. Ash Walsh is a mover. He's up to 5th, and he leads the Privateers Cup.
Well, Scott, valuable championship points for you.
Yeah, it's all this weekend was about. Just come here and get as many championship points as we could. Winning was a bonus, but hey, I'm stoked for the boys. That's all we had. The boys in front of us were good, so congrats to them and congrats to Chaz and FBR, and we'll come back stronger in Bathurst.
And that's where the next round of the Dunlop Series is. It supports the Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000 at Mount Panorama in October. Coverage of both races in our telecast across the race weekend. But it's Chaz Mostert who picks up his 2nd round win of 2012, and this series is a long way from done. Thanks to James Moffat and the whole team. I'm Aaron Noonan. We'll see you at Mount Panorama.